Hi, guys, and welcome back to Interact's Grow podcast. So great to be with you all. I'm your host, Jessmyn Solana, and with me today, I have CEO Josh Haynam. Josh, thanks for hopping on this week. Today, we are going to talk about it's sort of tangential to YouTube last week, but different in the sense that I feel like the strategy is completely different. The content's different, and the way you sort of attack it is totally different. So, should you join in on the TikTok hype for your business?
I don't know. Let's figure it out.
First and foremost, okay, I want to say that, we've tried all of them. So I feel like we have a little bit of a good sort of insight on what the answer is to this, but like all things, it depends on you, it depends on your business, depends on what you're comfortable with and if it makes sense with your audience. But before we sort of jump into everything, what is short term can't talk today, short form video content?
Short-term videos.
It feels that way.
Yeah, it is. Actually, maybe that's a Freudian slip. You know, the Freudian slip where it's like you say what you actually meant. Um, because it is kind of short-term video. Like that's what I've really noticed with the when we've tried TikToks and YouTube Shorts and even Instagram Reels is like you might get a bunch of traffic, but it dies immediately,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of the opposite of like long form or long term content, where it's like you might get like 3 views a day, but then over the next 3 years, that's like 1,000 views versus like the shorts, you'll get 1,000 views on day one and then zero after that. So maybe that is kind of what it is. I think it's like immediately usable content, I guess, is the best way I see it. Like whereas like a long-term long form content is meant to be something that you learn and then maybe put into practice later. A short-term short form video, YouTube short, TikTok, whatever, is like, oh, I learned this thing, I'm gonna do it right now or later today. Like I'm gonna get a recipe, I'm gonna make it for dinner. I think that's what I see.
Or sometimes it's not even you've done it before. It's like, oh, I saw this in someone else's video, so let me give it a try. And it either works or doesn't work. I never really know if it's real or not. If when people say, oh, it totally works, it's actually working, or it's that cut where it actually took them maybe like hours to do it. Um, and it didn't actually happen, or it did happen, I don't know. But for me, I think the short form video content is really, like you said, yeah, that easily digestible. And, what's great about it is when I'm going to talk about it first from like a consumer perspective. Like when you're watching a video and the algorithm learns like what you actually like to watch, what you're really going through, and what you're liking or commenting on, it's going to continue showing you the same type of video. And it's really interesting. It's almost like your favorite TV show that never ends, because there's always new content of the same exact thing that you've seen multiple times out there, right at your fingertips.
Yeah, and as I'm just literally thinking about it as you're describing it that way, I wonder if part of the reason why everyone talks about the TikTok algorithm and why it's so good is it just has a lot more data points. Like I was reading a bunch of research papers about these recommendation engines, and they were mostly built in like the early to mid 90s for like Amazon. You know how Amazon was like the first one to be like, here's recommended products. Everything is basically just based on that. So it's not like this crazy thing that everyone talks about where it like knows you. It's just really just learning your interests and then feeding you the same content. But unlike Netflix or even YouTube, where they might have like, I don't know, if people watch a lot of Netflix videos, maybe you watch like 10 movies, 10 movies a week. Like, you only have so much time that you're awake. So that's like 10 points of data that it has. Maybe on YouTube, you could watch 100 videos a week, but on TikTok, you could watch 1,000 videos a week in the same amount of time. So it just has a much, much larger data set to pull from. And the way those recommendation systems work is as it just gets a larger data set, the more accurate it is in giving you recommendations. So I wonder if that's a big part of why it's so engaging.
Right. Let's talk a little bit about from the creator side, right? Because I think talking about data points is really important in this. When I mean, tested it out for 3 months, I think 4 months. And what's tough about the process in creating a TikTok video, if you have a specific purpose, like your business, right? Or you're trying to sell something, or you're trying to like build a platform rather than, I'm not talking about the fun dance ones, or I'm not talking about the people who go on there to become an influencer. I'm talking about, you have a business, you sell things, or you're selling an idea or a service, and you're trying to build a platform on social media in order to like bring awareness to you and your business. So in terms of these data points, you have to, create the engaging video. That's one part. And then you have to write the caption with really targeted keywords. That's the second part. On top of that, you have to have the right hashtags, third part. And then within the video, when you're editing, you also have to have those keywords in the video. And I think that's what has to do with part of those data points, is making sure people find you in as many ways as possible. So whether it's the algorithm learning, sort of, you're putting the right keywords into your videos. So through the algorithm, people find you, or through search, they find you.
Mm. Yeah, because there's just more keywords that you can include, right? Where it's like you can have the keyword in the description in what you actually say, which TikTok is reading all of what you say, and you can have it as like an overlay on the video. So you can have 3x the keywords. And then the fourth component of that is probably just like whether people actually watch your videos. And that's probably, I mean, TikTok has open sourced their algorithm because of what's going on with the political stuff. So you can see what it is. And it's basically those 4 points. It's like, how many times is the keyword being used? And then do people who search for that keyword or have an interest in that keyword actually watch your video all the way through? And if all four of those things happen, then you'll eventually just get pulled into the algorithm and your videos will get shown.
When we were both creating videos it was towards the end of last year, we talked a lot about it each week. One of the things I recall you mentioning was, look, like if you look at some of the biggest players on TikTok, you'll see that their views are all over the place. Right? It's like they'll have videos where it has like 1,000 views, then it'll jump to 1 million, and then it'll be like 600,000, then maybe like 50,000. How much of that do you think is, the creator or the algorithm?
So it is the algorithm. The way the algorithm works right now is that it basically gives you an equal chance of success. Now it's like equal in air quotes because it's not actually equal. There is a weighting and a score given. If you have a highly followed account and people watch your videos a lot, you're going to have a higher chance of being pulled into the, For You feed than a brand new creator. But it's less that way than YouTube or especially Google. Like Google's, so if Google is like a 10 on like how much authority does your site have and how much does that impact your rankings, YouTube's like a 5 and TikTok's like a 2 or a 3. So you do have a better chance of getting pulled into the algorithm and having people see your stuff. It also means that like every time you create a new video, you don't really have this like bulkhead to lean on the way you do on other platforms where it's like, okay, I have a lot of subscribers on YouTube because if you in the TikTok interface, right? Like it's not built around subscribers and like who you follow per se. Like you can see that, but it's not necessarily like the main thing. So it's almost more of like a recommendation entertainment engine rather than a social network is how people have been talking about it. So it does have that aspect.
That is so interesting, because I just realized as you said that, I never look at there's two tabs, right? There's like the For You page, which is the recommendations that they give you, and then there's the people that you follow, and I almost never look at that part. So would you say then that on TikTok specifically, it would differ from, let's say, Instagram, because on Instagram, the number of followers does play a part in your account, whereas on TikTok, it might not.
Yeah, and I think it's probably part of why TikTok is better, like in terms of engagement and how much time people spend on there, is because it doesn't have that bias towards like, oh, you have a lot of followers, so we're going to show your content to everybody. And what ends up happening on Instagram, right, is like once you have a lot of followers, then half of your content is ads, and that's not really that engaging. And so over time, the engagement will drop off. You know, these influencers with millions of followers, you don't really want to see their content a lot of the time because it's full of ads. Whereas on TikTok, they're not going to give that influencer the stage just because they have a lot of followers. That influencer actually has to do the work every single time and show up. So in that sense, it kind of does level the playing field of like, if you are brand new to the platform, you have not an equal chance of success, but a more balanced chance of success versus somebody that's got a ton of followers on there.
I will say what's really interesting is there are people that I've found on Instagram through their Instagram reels. Um, let's say they have like 50K views, right? On Instagram. I'll go to their TikTok and they'll have millions of views, which I always found really interesting because I don't really know what that says about sort of the difficulty in getting up there on Instagram, but it does seem like you have more of a chance on TikTok.
Yeah, but then it's kind of like what is quickly gained is quickly lost, right? Like,
Hmm.
you know, you might get a million views on one TikTok video and then the next one you'll get 200 views. Whereas Instagram and Facebook and Google and Twitter and pretty much every other YouTube, like they have this like following mechanism built in to incentivize creators to stick around and like continue building their following over time. Whereas, I don't know, I mean, this is more like a business problem for TikTok, but like the connection with creators is not as great because you're not able to build that following over time. So if you're thinking about it, right, as a marketing strategy, I think those are two items to consider, and part of why, like, personally I would prefer to continue creating on YouTube and then just cut those videos into TikToks rather than trying to be a TikTok original creator, right? Like, I'm not necessarily interested in creating original TikToks. I'll take what I'm making for YouTube and turn it into TikToks. But I don't know that I would invest as TikTok being like your, mountain that you're going to build up.
Yeah, let's jump into that because me and you both tested out sort of like different types of TikTok accounts last, God, when was that? August, September,
Mhm.
somewhere around the fall of last year. And I was very much the, okay, let's do sort of these organic TikTok style videos, make sure it's punchy, catchy, tells a story, and your typical TikTok style video. It would take me so long. I think that's why I ended up giving up on it because, and I really have a big appreciation for people where that's their whole job is it takes so long because you have to think of the strategy for, let's say, like a month, right? And then on top of that, you have to create the video. And then as you're editing the video, that actually doesn't, it takes longer than you think. When you're editing inside of the TikTok editor, then you have to find the right sound. And then you have to, like, maybe do voiceover sometimes or don't do a voiceover. It also has to be engaging. And then you have to have like an actual point to what you're saying. Versus if you create a video like what you're saying for YouTube, but you cut it, it's kind of killing two birds with one stone. How long would you say that takes compared to if you were to like put your phone in front of your face and, selfie style record that video?
I mean, I think any good piece of content takes a lot of time. Like, there's this myth, I think, that content is free because it's free to create, but it's not. Like, every time I create a piece of content, whether it's a video or a blog post, or if I'm going straight to a short, I am planning it for 3 or 4 hours. I'm writing several drafts. I'm recording maybe once or twice or three times. It's like a 6 or 7 hour process. Now, if you think about like how much your time is worth and what else you could be doing for your business, whether it's like having a call with a client or getting an upsell from a client or helping a client onboard or convert, right? I think you have to weigh all those things and think about what is worth it for me to put my time into. So I guess the answer to that is like, it doesn't really take much time to cut a YouTube video into shorts. You can use our tool we're using right now is called Munch. I think it's pretty good. I like it so far. It basically just takes clips out of your longer videos and turns them into TikTok shorts, Instagram reels, whatever. So you can still have a presence on those platforms. And, it's just going to cut out like the best bits of your longer videos. But then what I can do is I can dedicate that 7, 8, 9 hours to making a YouTube video, and that's going to last. And it's on a platform where it will grow over time. Like, I made a video on building quizzes with AI in like November, and the views are going up like every day rather than, it has one hit and then drops. But I would take that, cut it into like 5 or 6 TikTok shorts, whatever, drip those out just so there's a presence on those platforms. And that takes, maybe an hour to like make sure they're all good rather than spending an additional 7 hours trying to make a series of TikToks when in reality, like it's not something that's going to last over time.
I do want to bring up this point of, hearing you speak about, spending time on the YouTube video and then cutting it to have that presence on the platform. As from an entrepreneur's perspective, let's say we're talking about our customers, putting ourselves in their shoes. What's what would you say, I guess, is the pros and cons of, needing to have that presence versus actually enjoying what you're doing and wanting to like market in that way rather than, let's say, running an ad or um maybe just staying on YouTube or just doing TikTok rather than YouTube.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think whatever you choose, even though the TikTok, you might get into the algorithm and one of your early videos goes viral, gets a lot of views, whatever. If you actually want to use it as a main marketing channel, it's going to take a long time to like become an expert at it, right? Like one of my favorite YouTubers, Doug DeMiro, he like reviews cars and he's been doing it like basically every day since 2005. And, he just sold his company for like $30 million. He owns the whole thing. Great outcome. But like his first, 150, 200 videos weren't even videos, they were blog posts and like no one was reading them. And then eventually he got like a part-time job writing. And then he started making videos and he make more videos. And it just kind of it's like any skill. And so I think it is important to pick one, I think, that's like really up your alley in terms of like, I actually enjoy creating this type of content. Now, it's not all enjoyable. Like that's the reality of like just being an entrepreneur is like there's always gonna be stuff you have to deal with that you don't love. Like it might be the editing portion, it might be like the planning portion, it might be actually talking to a camera if you feel like you need to be on camera. It's not going to be all just like, oh, this is exactly what I love doing. But I think you can pick the one that you would actually see yourself doing for 3 to 5 years, because in reality, like if you want to establish a real presence, it's going to take you several years and many, many iterations of getting better before you can have a real presence.
I think that's the one thing, at least for TikTok, that I was thinking about this. I think it was this morning. I was looking through my calendar and I had a note for that 6 month mark of it's coming up. And I obviously did not make it to 6 months. But I think the one thing I sort of regret in that test was actually pulling through every single day for that full 6 months just to see, okay, where am I at now? I didn't do it long enough. But that's sort of the, I guess, downside or caveat to this type of strategy is you have to be consistent. And on top of that, you got to give yourself actual time to build that presence. It's not going to always, I think people always talk about virality on TikTok especially, and hit that one video or like publish that one video that's going to go viral. But that could happen in 3 videos, but it could also happen in 100 videos. It could happen in 200 videos. It could happen in 1,000. We don't know. You won't know until you finally kind of crack the code, I guess you could say. But if you do decide to go with this strategy as a part of your marketing, you have to have that consistency.
Yeah. And I mean, the overnight success viral stuff doesn't even work anyways, because if your third video goes viral, you don't have any sort of mechanisms in place to actually capture the value of that virality. Like maybe you have ads or it's sponsored and you'll make like a quick hit of money, but like you don't have a funnel in place for how do you stay in touch with people that want to learn from you more, because like we were talking about, they don't necessarily follow you on TikTok and you're not necessarily going to build up that way. Plus, if you make one video that happens to go viral, there's remember that video of like how animals eat food on YouTube? It's hilarious.
Yeah.
um but like, I mean, not a knock against that channel, but like the rest of their videos are really odd, and like you don't really want to go and watch the rest of them. um so even if you have one overnight success, it's not going to solve all the problems. Like the long-term problem solving happens in building out an actual like process for creating content. And then when people want to engage with you, what's the next step and the next step and the next step? So you won't even be ready if something does go viral. And I think you just learn a lot more if you really invest. And I mean, I did the same thing. Like, didn't stick with TikTok, but what I did stick was YouTube, and putting out at least one video a week, alongside Jackie on our team. And then you guys have been super helpful in like editing those. So our YouTube channel is really taking off. And then for you as well, like you might have not stuck with TikTok, but stuck with the podcast. That's going really well. So I think you kind of have to pick and choose. Like you can't do everything. And I think this is just a general business principle. Like do one thing in the world the best, like be the best in the world at one thing, and then use like AI to be on the other platforms.
Right. Which does bring me sort of back to when we were talking about Munch. I believe that is a type of AI specifically for editing videos, right? How do you, or well, how does Munch, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but how do they like pick out the best parts of your YouTube video to cut into, that short form?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine like from doing my own prompt engineering stuff, like they're probably just looking for stuff like tonality and
Mm,
pauses in your talking, and where your voice sounds more excited, like sentiment analysis is really easy with AI. Like you can feed the transcript to an engine and it will tell you where the person sounds most excited. So it's probably just like pulling that stuff, like
mm.
sentiment analysis, and then pulling out like this is where the person was most excited or where they were most serious. And they'll just pull a clip from that section.
I would be really interested to test out, going back into like that TikTok style video, but using, like Chat GPT to create a script or like an outline of those talking points. That was one of the things I struggled with the most was what the hell do I talk about on this video that I didn't talk about yesterday? And also I think figuring out, what is the point of your TikTok channel, or like your Instagram reels? They're all so different or they can be so different. But I struggled with feeling like I wanted to talk about myself more and being, a remote employee or working for a software company, maybe traveling while working, things like that, versus the actual topics of what we do as a software company and quizzes in general and how to create a quiz. It was really hard to kind of decide, okay, well, what's the difference in that? Because I've seen entrepreneurs do both. I've seen them talk specifically about their services or they educate you in a way that leads back to their services, or they'll show you what their product is versus somebody who you kind of really attach to because of who they are and what their story is. And then I realize, oh, they're an entrepreneur, they like sell an actual service, and this is all about, this is actually like a way for them to promote themselves. So in talking about the strategy for short form content, how do you decide between that story based versus here's what I do?
Yeah, I think that it's a guess and check thing, honestly. Like, I've been on a lot of platforms, right? So starting in 2011, started as a blogger. I've been still blogging since then, like for business purposes. YouTube, I think I made the first YouTube video in maybe 2014. Been like not as consistent, but then recently much more consistent the last like 2 years. I've tried out all the social platforms and the short form video. And I think that my big takeaway is when you try to engineer it from the start and be like, I'm going to create this piece of content because it's going to feed into this and that and that and that. And then that's going to be what gets us customers. It pretty much fails. I think the best content that I've ever made is something that actually solves a problem for a customer. Like I've been going back in and doing a lot more customer conversations recently, helping people use our AI. And it's just really eye opening of like, where are people getting stuck specifically and why, and what questions do they have when they're stuck? And, how many different solutions can I try to help them get unstuck? So I might try like 100 solutions on one tiny pinpoint of a problem. Like I'm about to make a video on, how to translate your offers and your products into quiz ideas, because a business owner always comes in and they're like, well, I want to recommend these products. And then it's like, okay, but what's the quiz idea? And there is a translation mechanism that you can use. It's really similar to how ChatGPT works, actually. It's like a transformer. Like you have products, you want a quiz title. Here's how to do it, right? And that's going to be, I know that will be great content because I've actually just had that conversation like 50 times in the last month, right? So I think that's where like the really, really good stuff comes from. And I think that it doesn't really matter what platform it's on. Like if you can stick to that, then you'll end up seeing good success at the end of the day. And it doesn't really matter which platforms come and go either. Like Google is pretty much mess now, and it's really hard to stand out there. But then you got YouTube and you got shorts, and you got all this stuff, but you're saying the same stuff. Like you're really digging into what are my customers trying to do that I can actually be helpful with in a unique way, translate that over into some form of content. And that's like where you actually hit that sweet spot of like, and then of course you are yourself, right? Like you show up, you're the one talking about it, and people do, gravitate towards certain ways of talking, which is why it doesn't matter if there's like 50 people in your space. Like somebody likes the way that you talk about it more than the other person, or vice versa. Totally great. And there's lots of room for everybody.
There's also this, I think, sort of unspoken fear around needing to create new content. And I want to emphasize the word new, as in like, new topic, new video, new everything. But kind of alluding to what you said, where you say the same thing over and over again, you could take the same content, rework it, obviously repurpose it into other types of content, but you can also take that same topic and create a new video on it, release it as a new video, but it's still the same thing that you've said before. And I think what's interesting is people don't actually remember. And a lot of the times that is kind of what we look for when we're thinking of short form content. Like I was saying earlier, where the algorithm learns, right? Like what you like to watch. So people want to keep rehearing that same thing. They want to see that same thing over and over again. And I think there's way too much emphasis on this creating new content, but you can still create new content with the same topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like any sort of high skill environment, right? You think about like Steph Curry or LeBron James, like they might come up with a new move once a year, like a new basketball move, right? Once a year. But the rest of the year, they're practicing their old moves 4 to 6 hours a day, every single day. And the improvement that they're making on those moves is so minuscule that unless you are them, you can't see it. Maybe their coach could see it, but like you will just notice, oh, when I, took this step to the left, I was 0.001 seconds faster this time, and I was, 0.001% less off balance this time. So that helps me to be in a better position to make this shot. Same thing when you're making content. Like, oh, this sentence had the word to in it. This is my pet peeve for myself. Like, it has the word to in it twice. How can I write the same sentence without the word to in it twice next time? And it gets so minute in that way where it's like you are diving into each sentence, how this sentence interacts with the next sentence and the one behind it and the one in front of it, and how it connects to the music. You watch a creator like Casey Neistat, who's been on YouTube for 15 years, and it's like every song that he has completely connects with the video. And unless you're him, you might not notice it. But then when you watch it, you're just like, oh wow, like the song changes every time the scene changes, or it corresponds with what's going on in the background. And like, for him, he talks about it. It's like shooting is easy, like making the video easy. I spend 3 or 4 hours editing that video every single time, even when he was doing it every single day. And that's the part where you really build that skill. And so I think that's the thing. Is like you might come up with something net new every once in a while, but most of the time it's just like that slow grind of making the old stuff better.
Right. Slow grind, I would say consistency, and also just not putting too much pressure on yourself. I think that was a big thing for me is every time I put out a TikTok video, I'd watch it 20 times before I actually hit publish or post because I was like, will people even think this is fun? Or will they think it's cool? Or will they think, or what if they don't even think it makes any sense? And I think that's another part of it is just too much pressure in like what other people will think or say about the content that you put out there. And at the end of the day, like you said, like people might not even notice the
Yeah.
difference?
Yeah, I watch and or listen back to everything once after I publish it, because if I watch it before, I might be tempted not to publish it. And if it took me 3 days to get ready to publish this thing, and then I say, oh, I'm not going to publish it, then I miss those next 3 days where I could get on to the next thing. So watch it back once and kind of take some notes on, I wish this had been better or had been better. Like, oh, I was moving my head too much in this video, or the tone was not varied enough, whatever. Take some notes in a notepad, let it go, and then next time around, work those in as best I can, but not overthink it too, because you overthink it, then you're going to spend the whole time you're making the content thinking about all the things you're supposed to do, and then you can just completely mess it up. So, yeah, I think it's a mix. Like there's a certain quality bar, and the quality bar continues to raise the longer you're in the game. Like if you're brand new, it doesn't matter. Just put your stuff out. If you've been doing it for a long time and you have a brand around a certain level of quality, then yeah, you do need to spend hours and hours refining that content before you put it up. But it still has to reach this point where it's just like nothing's ever going to be exactly perfect. And the imperfection is what makes your stuff stand out, anyways.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I want to close out with our original question. Should you join in on the TikTok hype for your business? I think for me, the answer is always it doesn't hurt to try. It was really important for me, at least to dive into it, try it out. And it wasn't to say that I would never go back and try it again. I think I would do it differently next time. But I can identify with, working for a startup company, having all these different hats. It was really important to figure out what is like already easy for me to do, what's taking more energy and less energy, and sort of where can I invest more of my time of something that's I know will actually finish and will give me something more immediate or like more immediate results. And when it opens back up, if I'm open to it, willing to kind of go back into that strategy.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that perspective. It's not just like do it or don't do it. Because I think I have a similar approach. It's not like do it or don't do it. I think I would weigh it against all the other things that you can do. We've been doing this a lot more in our product development, and it's helping me a lot where it's like there's 5 things we can do with our product. Let's create a ranking system of what we think the perceived value of each update is. So if you think about it as like channels, you have like YouTube, Shorts, TikTok, blogs, and podcast. You can't do all 5. Maybe you can do 2. So build out a ranking system of, what do you think the perceived value is to your business, short term and long term? What's the risk of doing it or not doing it? Which are easiest, like which one is the lowest barrier to entry, lowest cost, etc. And you can kind of just work it out that way where it's like you actually have a score for each channel, and maybe it'll turn out that TikTok is by far the highest score. Then go for it. I think it's really important to keep in mind like your limited time, because also if you spend all your time trying to get on every new platform, you have no time to maintain your real business. That's going to suffer, and then that's a long-term risk. So I would just run through a risk reward matrix and look at whether it actually makes sense for you to do.
I love that in our answers, you could really see the difference in our personalities. Mine's very like intuitiveness. What does it feel like? And yours is very like analytical, strategic, which is great because then for those of you who are either of those, you have like different metrics to deciding whether or not you want to join in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I think like you also got to go with what works for you, because at the end of the day, like you're the one that's going to have to stick with it if it's you. So
Right.
maybe you you want to lead with your intuition and it makes no sense on paper, do it anyways.
There you go. Well, Josh, thank you so much. And for those who are listening, let us know what you guys think if you're ready to join in on the TikTok hype, and we'll see you next time.